We want to go to a story we first brought you just yesterday. Remember the case of the rapper A$AP Rocky, a judge ruling he must stand trial on the charges. He fired a gun at a former friend. This was an altercation that happened back in 2021. We've been relying on the reporting of our friend, legal affairs journalist Meghann Cuniff. She joins me now. Meghann, thanks so much for being with us here. You and I were just talking, last week, about this lawsuit with Diddy and Cassie, his former girlfriend. That seems to have resolved itself, and you were previewing this story. This is what was going to occupy most of your week, and I would argue that it has here. What do we need to know about this? Were they in court today, too, or just yesterday?
It was yesterday. The judge made her decision yesterday. And this was really kind of a routine thing in criminal procedure in California, where a judge who only holds preliminary hearings, which is after the case is held over to trial, it goes to a different judge. So the judge had to air out the evidence here and basically decide if there was enough probable cause for him to actually be charged with 2 counts of first-degree assault. So I think it's fairly common that she does find probable cause. I think it would be exceptional for her in these cases to routinely not find probable cause. So it was pretty expected that she would find probable cause here. And it was really the first chance for us to see the evidence and hear about what the defense could be here. We heard from the alleged victim a couple weeks ago, and then yesterday was testimony from a police detective who really detailed a lot of surveillance video that was captured all this.
Yeah, and Meghann, we do have that from your YouTube page of what was shown in court yesterday, that surveillance video you just referred to, I believe, of the altercation itself. What are we watching here?
Okay, so that's Rocky with the white thing on the back of his sweatshirt. And he had met up with Relly, who's the alleged victim, who he's known since high school. And you can see somebody get in between the two of them there. This was a mutual friend of theirs. But you see Rocky aggressively come back at Relly. And when the detective was testifying, they were doing the still images that clearly show him holding a gun in his hand. And then this is the surveillance video from after the initial confrontation. Relly actually went after Rocky, chased after him, and because he wanted to tell him how angry he was for pointing a gun at him and pulling a gun on him. And this is when Relly claims that shots were fired, that he thinks that there were 3 or 4 shots. And it's hard for me to point out who exactly is who on here, but the detective really detailed how they think people are positioned here. And the judge even said herself that she agrees with the defense that this doesn't show the shooting, but that you do hear audio of 2 gunshots fired later on. And she believes that the surveillance video we just saw does show Relly dancing, kind of trying to avoid what he said was bullets being fired at him.
Do we know what was, the nature of the altercation? I mean, what was the nature of the fight? I mean, what were they in disagreement over that led to this? Let's just re-rack this so we can see the actual moments here of the fight itself. Do we have any idea, where this was too in L.A.?
Yeah, this was in Hollywood, on a street corner in the Hollywood area. They had the street corners, of course, completely pinned down through mapping and testimony, just to lay the foundation for the fact that this surveillance video was accurate. But Rocky and Relly have been friends since high school, and Relly was saying that they were real cool back in high school, and they had dreams together. But of course, Rocky made it really, really big, and he was still part of this group of friends that was had a text message thread going, and there was a death of one of the friends. Their mutual friend Josh had died. So Relly's testimony was that they were all texting about ways to raise money to get Josh's body transported back to New York State, and that Rocky chimed in and said that he would just take care of it, because obviously he's with Rihanna. I mean, Rihanna's a billionaire. He has the ability to pay for this all himself. Right. And Relly testified that he was under the impression that Rocky didn't follow through on that. Oh. And there's some questions from Rocky's defense about maybe he actually did end up paying for Josh's funeral. But Relly says the point is he thought at the time that Rocky had backed out on his promise. So he sent Rocky a threatening, not a threatening text message. It was kind of a disparaging text message that was shown in court a couple weeks ago. And it began with, you're so fake it's sad. And wow. The questions from the prosecutors to Relly were about, you feel like you can talk to him like that, even sure. after he's got, famous, you go so far back, you feel you can talk this way to him. And Relly said, yeah, he feels comfortable talking to him and isn't afraid of him. So that started this beef between Relly and Rocky that ended up with Rocky calling Relly repeatedly and wanting to meet up in Hollywood. It was November 6, 2021. And Relly testified that he went to the meeting outside of this hotel that he told Rocky he was staying at, thinking that it wouldn't be a violent confrontation, that they would walk away like brothers, like they'd always been. So said he was surprised when Rocky brandished a gun.
Wow, I want to put up this tweet here because I think this is really interesting because we covered Donald Trump so much, Meghann, here, and people no doubt recognize Joe Tacopina, that name. He was Trump's lead attorney there yes. in the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit in Lower Manhattan mere months ago. You tweeted this, A$AP Rocky's lawyer, Joe Tacopina is used to big stages. But his recent defense of Donald Trump and E. Jean Carroll's lawsuit was in Manhattan federal court, where there are no cameras. Rocky's case has given us real courtroom footage of Tacopina in action. And Meghann, you caught up with Tacopina outside of court when he was leaving yesterday. You asked him about whether or not Rihanna is going to be in the mix. Also, he was asked whether or not a plea deal will be struck. He said no. And he kind of was previewing for reporters like yourself that there's going to be a lot of really explosive and damning testimony to come out of this. Anyway, in the meantime, this is what Tacopina had to say in court yesterday. Let's listen.
You've seen the photograph of this ghastly injury to Mr. Efron. Withdraw. You've seen the photograph of the injury to Mr. Efron's knuckle area, right?
Yes.
I'm just going to put that up here for a second. That one right there, right?
Yes.
It's a miracle he survived that shooting.
Your
Right,
argument, object to the argument.
Sustained.
Okay. So, based on your experience, detective, look at me for a second. I'm going to ask you,
Okay.
honestly, based on your experience, that injury, the scrape of the knuckles, 2 or 3 knuckles, depending on that photograph, appears to be consistent with him having hit someone or scraped it on the ground during a struggle, correct?
Which actually calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Well, the video you watched, I think you testified to this earlier, shows Mr. Efron struggling with Mr. Ills, I think, or A$AP Ills, right?
Yes, it appears on the video.
Does that appear to you to be a gunshot wound on that picture in evidence?
Objection, lacks foundation, calls for speculation.
Court's going to allow it.
Go ahead.
I can't tell you whether it is or it isn't, sir. I'm not a trained doctor or medical.
Oh, I know, because you're a
Personnel.
detective for 27 years. Please
Counsel,
explain.
counsel,
What did I do?
I warned you earlier about speaking over the witness. The witness is giving his answer.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so Meghann, if you could kind of walk us through this line of argumentation on Tacopina's part here. Is he claiming that A$AP Rocky, was involved in this altercation and he was, kind of acting in self-defense? Is that the claim?
Yeah, he's claiming that basically there was no shooting and that this is kind of a shakedown or extortion attempt by Relly, and that he could have caused the scrape on his knuckles by simply wrapping the table. And actually, there's a point in the hearing where Tacopina wrapped the table himself with his knuckles and had a kind of back and forth with the detective about where the wound on the knuckles would land if you did that. So he's definitely implying that this wound was self-inflicted by Relly. And then I think it was a moment in the courtroom for some people in the gallery who weren't familiar with the case and saw this photo, and you do kind of think, oh, oh, is that it? Is that why we're here? But as the judge even said in her ruling, the extent of the injury is actually not something that she can take into consideration here. And there's different levels of first degree assault in California. So someone could actually be charged with first degree assault in California just for pointing a gun at somebody. You wouldn't even need to fire the gun, let alone have the bullets hit the person.
Okay.
So that's like the first tier of first degree assault. And then you could fire the gun and the bullets don't hit the person. And that's kind of the second tier of first degree assault. And then there's the third first degree assault of actually of the bullets actually hitting the person. So we're looking at a first degree assault charge. He's charged with 2 counts of first degree assault, one for brandishing the gun and then one for shooting the gun. And I think there's some debate before the jury trial about whether the bullet actually hit him. He claims he was grazed on the knuckles. So as the judge said, the extent of the injury is not something she's going to consider. And the jury is going to have a similar instruction where they're going to be instructed that just because the victim wasn't injured doesn't matter, but that they can consider the extent of the injury when deciding whether an assault occurred or what kind of assault it was. So he does have a little bit to work with here, but just with the surveillance video and then the audio of the gunshots, it obviously works in prosecutors' favor on that. But then there was some kind of discrepancies in testimony about when he went back to pick up the shell casings, and the fact that Relly actually went back to the scene and says that he found shell casings himself, but it was after police had canvassed the area looking for shell casings and not seen anything. So the defense does have some things like that they're obviously trying to work with to try to plant the seed that this is some kind of made up thing. But obviously, I mean, the video shows something, and he clearly has a gun in his hand.
Right. Meghann, just lastly, let's just watch the moments when the judge kind of issued her ruling and said that A$AP Rocky will stand trial for this. Let's watch this.
So here, the evidence begins with phone calls and texts from Mr. Mayers to Mr. Efron, the remaining witness. I agree with Mr. Presbomic that tempers were heightened on both sides from both parties. The evidence then continues with video. The first video shows Mr. Efron walking and meeting up with Mr. Mayers and 2 other friends, and immediately a gun is seen. And for the testimony, the defendant makes a threat. After the parties are separated, Mr. Efron follows Mr. Mayers. The court can only question why he would do that, but as he indicated in his testimony, he was upset and he wanted to let Mr. Mayers know the full extent of his anger at that point. The next video shows the group regathered, and per the victim, Mr. Mayers fires at him. The video does show, the court agrees with the defense that you don't see an actual shooting on the video. Later, in another section of video, you do hear 2 shots. In any event, Mr. Efron does what appears to the court to be a dance around one of the other individuals to avoid being shot. In his testimony is that he was shot, and there was evidence of that via the clips that were shown of his knuckles and so forth. We then see a video of the victim returning to retrieve shell casings, and there's an issue as to whether or not that was him or not. We also see the video of law enforcement with several, I think it was 6 or 7, testified to by the detective officers on the scene. And they do have flashlights out, but query whether or not we see the full extent of any search at that point. In a preliminary hearing, the standard of proof is much different than what is required at trial. It is simply whether or not there is probable cause to believe that charged crimes are committed. It is a low burden. There's case authority that indicates all that is required is a scintilla of evidence.
All right, so there was the judge there, Meghann Cuniff joining us yet again. That was your video, courtesy of you there inside the courtroom. I guess my last question is, does A$AP Rocky's life, is it on pause while this is all being adjudicated here? What is that like, I guess, for his career going forth? And what will you be looking for, I guess, in the weeks ahead here? We just watched the judge kind of issue this preliminary ruling here saying that A$AP Rocky must stand trial. I mean, what's A$AP Rocky's real name? I'm just curious.
Rakim Mayers.
Rakim Mayers.
Rakim Mayers. And so it was Rakim and Terrell, and Rocky and Relly are their nicknames, kind of like Charles goes to Chip. But I think things are going to get a lot more real for Rocky in this case in the next year. He's going to be arraigned on January 8th. He was already had that in the very beginning, but now that he's been held over, as they say, he's going to have an arraignment on January 8th. And then we're going to proceed to trial. I mean, maybe within the next year and a half. A lot is going to depend on the judge who's assigned the case, just what his or her calendar is like and how quickly this gets tried. But I think this is going to be becoming more of a reality in Rocky's life than it has been in the last year or so. But he's also out of custody on bond, and I wouldn't expect that to change through the trial. So right now, I think he just needs to work with his legal team and prepare for trial.
All right, Meghann Cuniff, we'll leave it at that. We always appreciate your reporting, and we're glad we have the time to kind of dive into it as well. And if we don't talk before Thanksgiving, please do have a good Thanksgiving. Thanks so much, Meghann.